emissions.
Oh, that's very interesting. Now we move to the second phase of this discussion, which is on the technology and innovation. And here I would like to put two questions for our colleagues from Mr. Akshay and Mr. Sander again. What do you think, Mr. Akshay first, what do you think is the role of energy incumbents? What role do they have in driving innovation and technology in the renewable energy sector? I do believe that Chevron is developing a lot of technologies in clean fossil, but definitely renewable will have to also be on the mix. And here I would also, it would be great if you highlight something about the recent Inflation Reduction Act announced by the U.S. administration and how Chevron could benefit from that.
Good. That's a long answer to that question. I'll try to make it brief. And I think a simple statement to begin with, a bold statement that innovation that does not scale is not impactful. Innovation that does not scale is not very relevant. It could be very interesting. You could get a lot of publications and patents, but it may not move the needle when it comes to addressing the net zero aspirations that everyone in this room has and the world has and expects of us. And it'll take a diverse set of capabilities, a diverse set of capital to de-risk innovation, to de-risk technology solutions, to commercialize technology solutions and integrate the new technology solutions with the energy system. And I believe that's the role that incumbents can play in partnership with everyone else, the startup companies, universities, national labs, and partnering with the government and leveraging the type of policy support that you get from the IRA and other incentives that the government provides. I think another point to note is the incumbents and companies like us, we have assets, we have capabilities, and obviously we have resources, people resources, as well as existing customer relationships that can actually help accelerate the de-risking of technology solutions and scaling them. And we leverage that in a big way. We partner with a lot of startup companies. Even now we're doing a startup on a novel carbon capture technology. If that's successful, then we'll be able to scale it very quickly in multiple locations within our footprint, and that technology will be available for everyone to use. And these are just one of many ways where incumbents can play a big role in accelerating the energy transition.
Very interesting. Mr. Sander, grid reliability and stability is a big factor. Mm-hmm. And I believe government's regulations here can play a pivotal role in enabling national grids and agencies of that form to address and mitigate the challenges. So what do you need from the government?
I think we need, what do we need from the government? I think we need support. I think the idea here is that, we are a partner to the government. I think the way to think about this is to your point. I think to Akshay's point, the role of an energy incumbent here is to provide impact, right? So we are the commercial scale provider of energy, and we are at the front line and engaged in this market transformation effort. So what we are looking to do is to take, interesting scientific ideas and interesting technology ideas and prove them at scale. So what we're looking to the government to do for us, to support help, is I think to provide support and the ability to accelerate. So when we look at partnerships with government, we look at sort of our ability. Well, let me put it this way. I'll take it in reverse here. I think a lot of our job is to help be a customer for energy innovation, right? So as projects move up through the academic world, the national laboratory world, and the startup world, we would work with the government to accelerate these technologies to scale, to achieve the impact we need. Because otherwise, if you're just doing innovation theater, you're not doing anything really at all. And so when we look to, government support, it's to accelerate the catalyst component of that, right? Is to really sort of, we have our own project roadmap and our own way of getting to our aspirational goals, because we see it as critical for us to survive and continue to be sustainable as a company. So, provide environmental sustainability alongside corporate sustainability. When you look to, government R&D, we're looking to do that on a schedule and faster. And so it helps with the component of absorbing some of that risk involved with making major structural changes to how we deliver energy to our customers.
Wonderful. The third phase of this discussion is on investments. And as you all know, without investments, nothing can be achieved. And here, I'd like to put a few questions for Amanda and John. And the first question will go to Amanda, as Shell is, of course, one of the world's largest energy firms, and as we now see a rising trend in its renewable and clean power investments, what policy measures would you like to see?
Mm-hmm. What do I want for Christmas? I think it's a great question, and I think maybe also helpful for me to set a little context about how Shell thinks about this. Our purpose in Shell is to provide more and cleaner energy, and to do that safely and affordably. And we also have an obligation to our shareholders to make really smart financial investments that actually provide strong returns. And we do that so that we can continue to reinvest in future energy opportunities. We have some challenges in front of us and some desires. And perhaps what I would do is use the IRA as an example of some good, really good public policy that's actually incentivized renewable development over the last sort of six months or so. The IRA is precedent-setting legislation, and it's really given us a shot in the arm. And I'd say it's highlighted a few key components for us of how the U.S. sees the energy transformation going forward. Firstly, it's really highlighted and made very clear that electrification is going to be key to decarbonizing the U.S. So we see that through EV credits. We see that through EV infrastructure grants. We see it through the ITC. We see it through the production tax credits. So there's a lot of evidence and support behind that piece of the future transformation. We also see that the IRA has provided investor confidence. And this is really important because the U.S. isn't the only place that's going through the transformation right now. And so you have to provide confidence to investors that the projects we're going to do here in the U.S. are going to be competitive in a global portfolio. And for Shell specifically, that's important because my projects are competing against projects in Europe and Asia. So that's a really important component. The third important component is really incentivize the build-out of the U.S. supply chain. So that's going to take some time. It's not there right now, but the incentives are there now for us to really start to double down on that build-out. And I think fourthly, and we've discussed a little bit of it here, is that the funding under the IRA and through the DOE, and we heard a little bit this morning in the hydrogen panel as well, is providing critical funding for research and development opportunities. And this really is the initial incentive, sort of the first place where we can have low-risk investments in new technologies and integration opportunities like decarbonizing ports or hydrogen wind integration. And those concepts are eventually concepts that we'll be able to scale up and make commercial. And that's the critical piece. I would put one more plug in as an additional ask, which is around transmission cost allocation. So in order to solve some of the really important challenges that we have around grid upgrades and interconnection, public policy that would encourage partnerships and collaboration around planning, ownership of this problem with developers, with customers, with state and federal governments, so that we can all collaborate together on a solution. That's the only way that we're going to actually be able to build out the infrastructure we require to electrify this country.
Okay, that's very interesting. And the last question here is for Mr. John. We've heard about the policy incentives, we've heard about the technology and the uncertainty. So my question here is, what could be the potential risks? And as you are the kind of a regulatory agency, what do you think could be the potential risk and benefits in investing in renewable energy from an incumbent's side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is actually that's a very prominent question in the way that we are needing to think about energy transitions. And truth is in a lot of ways, like there's incumbency and then there's incumbency, right? So, and there's arms of, Shell and Chevron that are looking for their investment opportunity spaces in the renewable generation space. And that is a very good long-term kind of perspective, given, where we're seeing kind of not only national policies going, but also global policies. So I think that really winds up being a long-term play. Truth is that there's already a lot of investment in incumbent facilities that we cannot just kind of pass off. Right? And we do need to think about what it means to continue to have value to the economy of that incumbent generation. I'm going to focus on electricity maybe here right now, but if by looking at what we need to maintain to keep reliability, keep affordability, how much new generation is going to be coming into a system at any one particular time, and how do we start thinking about the design of that system, even not only just from a technological perspective, but from a market perspective at the same time, right? Currently, all of our market structures are really designed around that incumbent generation, and it puts the renewable generation in a more risky position for the investment to happen. In New York and in New England, we're probably a little bit better off than in other parts of the country where we've separated out some of that generation investment. There's already degrees of risk on the generation side. That's good. But what we need to figure out is ensuring that we don't penalize the new entrant into a marketplace that really is designed around that incumbency. In New York, we're doing some interesting things, and when we're looking at what we call policy resources, which are primarily all of the renewable resources, they kind of get a bit of a buy on some of those kind of market requirements. PJM, so in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland system, they haven't been so lucky at that. New England's been a little bit more fortunate. But it is given the nature of the differences of how each of those markets were designed and how they're currently constructed. And it may be that we need to look at that transition a little differently in different places. And I think by doing that, then we can assume, degrees of appropriate kind of risk intervention to make sure that we do think about what it is going to take to get that long-term investment done. But, what do we need for short-term investment in order to make sure that the long-term investment will materialize?
Okay, that's all very interesting. That completes almost our discussion. But before we end it, I just would like, if any of our panelists would like to have a final comment, so perhaps start with you, John. Just a final comment on what do you think we should, from a NYSERDA perspective, what do you think is the role to enhance the role of energy incumbents in driving the transition?
Sure. I get, so when I think about it from, I might get a little vulgar here in a way, but I am wanting the Shell, Chevron balance sheets to come into our clean energy system in New York State, right? I think that actually at the end of the day is going to demonstrate that we have successfully advanced policy and that we have really put into place the market structures, the supply chain structures, the consumer-based marketplace for large energy investments, because it will take those large energy investments to move us to a widespread decarbonized economy. So bringing that in and NYSERDA wanting to play in a space where we're looking for those partnerships, how do we facilitate infrastructure investment? How do we facilitate the R&D that's needed? We really find is kind of our critical space, and we're very excited to be in that space now and look forward to working with the private marketplace in order to make sure that we can get our decarbonization to happen.
That's great. Amanda?
Yeah, thanks. I think the thoughts I'd like to leave in this room are that we're transforming the energy system, and that's super exciting. We're innovating and adapting as we go, and it's also really hard. This is hard work, and we don't have all the answers, and no one of us is going to solve this by ourselves. And frankly, right now, actually, no one's winning, and that is perhaps a little bit depressing, but it's true. The OEMs aren't making enough revenue to reinvest in the technology that we're going to need for the future. The developers aren't making enough money to reinvest in broad portfolios for development. The state and federal governments aren't making enough progress against their decarbonization targets. Customers aren't getting the clean and affordable energy that they want and need. And quite frankly, my kiddos are not getting the same planet that I grew up on. So what do we do about that? And I'd like to suggest that we think about this integrated energy system view, supported by integrated energy basins. And this is also where incumbents can help because we understand the end-to-end energy system. And this is about layering in technologies. This is about creating a holistic view of energy. This is an and story, not an or story. It's about layering in wind and solar and hydrogen and wave energy and biofuels and CCUS and oil and gas, and taking those together and understanding where we have adjacencies and synergies, where one of our technologies can leverage another technology so that we can better deliver. It's about taking a systems approach to how we're delivering this energy system and driving efficiencies around investment funding, efficiencies around operations, efficiencies around application of technologies. And that's the only way that we're going to get there. So if we're really going to do this, if we're really going to lean in, if we're going to lift up communities and lift up economies and actually help this planet, we have to collaborate. We have to do this together. We need to take all the big brains in this room and outside of this room to solve the problem, and that's the way that we're going to be able to move forward.
Excellent. Akshay?
Well, I think my key takeaway from this panel, as well as from some of the sessions in the morning, is around that the energy transition and the pathway to net zero will look very different for different countries because the velocity of change is going to be different. And this is because the needs of the countries, the needs of the people are different. The starting points are different. And as incumbents, we have a role to play and continue to play in providing affordable energy, reliable energy, and of course, sustainable and low-carbon energy now and into the future. And this is something that we can't do alone. No one company, no one industry or industry sector, or even no one country can do this by themselves. It'll take a village to get to where we need to be. And I'm excited about the opportunity in front of us. And I'm also excited to share that a company that has been around for 140 years, the workforce is excited to work on these problems. The workforce is exciting to join hands with all of you to address the problems in front of us.
Sander?
Sure. So when I think about the role of energy incumbents and I think about the role of National Grid, I think we see it as our responsibility and our mission to lead this energy transition, right? To set in place a pathway in motion to allow for market transformation. And I think that's the easy and exciting part. The longer road about this is that we need to learn how to do it, right? This is going to involve a lot of change, and it's going to involve a lot of careful thought. And so, we'll be looking to the markets, we'll be looking to our investments, we'll be looking to governments and academia to help us figure out a way on this pathway to actually sort of get beyond, signing on to an aspirational goal and moving towards an aspirational goal, so figuring out how to do things. The benefit of being an incumbent is that we are the incumbent. We have patient capital. It's not going to last forever. If we fail in our mission, we'll stop being the incumbent. We'll get disrupted. And so our goal is to really provide the structure and the catalyst and the framework for all of these pieces to come together for us to meet these goals as an organization. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of forward and backwards, and we're going to try to do this in a way where we provide the most benefit to our customers. We provide the most benefit to the folks who rely on us deeply, so equitably and with justice. To that end, when we do fail, we will learn stuff, and hopefully we won't fail too hard. We'll fail quickly, and we will learn as an organization. Internally, we will learn how to innovate. Internally, we will have to change the way we think about energy systems. But that comes with the technology, that comes with the market, that comes with the nature of what we're trying to release. So it's a very exciting future, I think, but now without its challenges.
Excellent. I would like to turn now to our audience and some of our directors, if there are any questions from the audience. Yes, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you for being here today. I have one question, because there's a general consensus that a big or a key accelerator or catalyst for the energy transition is having a carbon tax or a carbon price. I want to ask you, do you think this is a viable solution? And if so, what would be a right number for a carbon price?
Is this to any of our panelists specific?
Anyone who wants to answer.
So if anyone can address the question, feel free.
I'll start, I suppose. I don't have a view on a carbon price, so I'm going to punt on that. I think carbon pricing makes a lot of our decisions, commercial decisions, easier because it provides another metric for value. And I think what's important about that phrase is metric for value. I think when we look at the green future and the energy transition, you start thinking about things, starting to think of value as a holistic whole. Like, do things have commercial value is one layer, environmental value is another layer, valuable to a customer is a third layer, and then for equity and justice values. So you start looking at these projects from not just, really not in addition to a value street return, but also to a holistic value return in general. So what benefit to society does this project provide? So bringing that back to a carbon price, what a carbon price helps is that it connects a abstract value system to a finite value system. So we now know directly how we provide value in one way affects the balance sheet of another way. So a carbon tax provides that value very directly, but you can also provide other mechanisms as a way to connect finance to sustainability, or finance to equity, or finance to justice. So that's, I think, what the real critical benefit of having a carbon tax there is, that it's a very convenient way, a very good way of hanging on to a green future onto an existing mechanism of how we value projects.
Yes. And I can quickly add to that. Our company supports the Paris Agreement. And to achieve the ambitions laid out in the Paris Agreement, incentives that come out through carbon tax actually help drive decisions, help drive technology forward in areas that are really essential to decarbonize current energy production as well as the future energy system.
I would just support that. Shell is in a very similar position. We support carbon tax in a way that we think about incentives. And we talked about other ways to incentivize renewable development and decarbonization as well, and the IRA is an example of that, but carbon tax would be another example of that. And it's also a way to even the playing field. And so you have companies who want to move forward, who want to decarbonize their own operations, who want to help their partners decarbonize, and it's harder to do that from a financial investment perspective if the playing field isn't even and you're trying to do the right thing, but there are competitors who have a different view on what good looks like. So the carbon tax provides a framework for that.
And maybe, so we're looking at that in New York State right now. It is not maybe like a specific carbon price or a tax. We are looking at different types of mechanisms that can at least start to have us integrating, that cost of the emission reduction. But as I think Sander's saying, revealing value in terms of what are the market alternatives that we can be supporting as a result of, thinking about what a carbon price is really supposed to result in. Again, we're working in a lot of nascent with a lot of nascent technologies, a lot of nascent markets that need a lot of support. So if we're thinking about pricing mechanisms that can actually make sure that we're putting into place the alternatives for consumers to maybe even avoid some of that type of cost while retaining all of the other different values that they need out of their energy systems, then I think we have a winning combination there. So something we really are trying to think about in New York, but want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is realizing it's coming from the goal and not just from just the imposition of a price for kind of that carbon valuation's sake.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bree. I work with CMarkits Innovation with Avangrid out of Rochester, New York, and actually a lot of our pilot programs are because of NYSERDA, so thank you for that. And I wanted specifically to ask how you feel about, coming from a utility, what the potential is of a natural gas ban, if you think that's even a realistic potential or if there's a timeline on that. I know it's kind of heavily debated on whether natural gas will be kind of incorporated in this clean energy transition or if a total ban on it would even make sense. So I just wanted to see what your opinions are on that, potentially specifically for Sander.
Well, I'll start. We are moving away from natural gas, right? So we have committed to a vision where we are looking to change from a natural gas-dominated gas distribution network to one that is more dominated by hydrogen and renewable natural gas. The hows and wherefores of that is certainly what we're working with now, which is that you've got an incumbent natural gas distribution network that we need to figure out how to transition in a way that works in general, that still provides service to our customers, that still provides a landing for National Grid, right? The challenge there is in the details. The challenge there is in the details where we need to think top to bottom about that system, about what parts of the system do we absolutely need to maintain, what parts of the system can we convert, what parts of the system do we need to change and convert to another use. And that's something that I think is under hot debate right now. But that's and when you bring it back to a ban on natural gas, I mean that's a matter of timeline. That's a matter of figuring out when and how fast and which technologies do we need to incorporate to continue to evolve our natural gas system.
We have 4 minutes to go, so 1 or 2 questions more. Any questions? Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Oliver Booth. I have a quick question just as thinking about your involvement with the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the startups that are in the space. How do you think about your role as an investor versus as a potential customer versus doing it yourself?
Maybe I can take a stab. So I work in Chevron Technology Ventures. Our venture arm has been around for over 2 decades. And our role is probably all of the above that you mentioned. But it actually starts by identifying the problems that the industry is facing. So it starts even earlier than the concept that the entrepreneurs may have, and bringing that forward to the bright minds in universities and national labs, people here, having conversations so that our bright minds are working on the right problems. And then it goes beyond investing, at least for us. So we invest in startup companies, but we also, 80% of the companies that we invest in, we provide an opportunity for them to trial their technology, to de-risk their technology solutions within our footprint. Because if you look at the valley of death for many entrepreneurs and startup companies, is the ability to go from a concept, from a proof of concept to something that is a scalable solution, and we help with that. And then as technology matures, we provide opportunities to scale and grow within our footprint. We typically do not acquire companies. We let them grow, let them have their IP, intellectual property. That's so important, vital for the entrepreneur and for the startup companies. So it's a system that is a partnership and a collaboration versus a one-way relationship.
Excellent.
I'm going to jump in on that as well because, I think from, NYSERDA and the state government's perspective, that's kind of our DNA at NYSERDA. We were initiated in the 1970s as a research and development support entity. A lot of that at the beginning was really looking at concept and a lot of testing and maybe even getting to degrees of demonstration. But I think like our R&D kind of chain has really evolved over time. So we are looking at trying to get to proof of concept all the way through to market introduction, and then utilizing our programs to leverage scale of different technologies. Now, mind you, we like to do that within the borders of New York State, right? We're looking for that economic opportunity to create in New York. But I think, ensuring that we have, the full support running all the way through to, through to early commercialization is something that we're very much dedicated to and want to make sure that we are supporting kind of whether it's the business, whether it's the technology, all the way through. That's really, that we see that as part of what it means to be successful in our decarbonization strategies.
Excellent. Any further comments?
I would echo, I think Shell has a very similar and parallel setup to Chevron as well with our Shell Ventures. And I think one of the additional things I would just add is that we think really hard about what our own differentiated capability is in-house, and that helps dictate what we're going to build in-house and where we go elsewhere for it. And we're more than happy to partner. I think partnerships have been sort of the cornerstone of our development, again, for over 100 years of how we do things, and particularly as we put the regional overlay on where we're operating, we need to understand what that local context is as well. And often that's not going to come internally from Shell, that's going to come from the startups and other independent consultants that we find in the communities in which we're operating.
Excellent. Thank you. With that, guys, our time's up. So I would like you, if you give a round of applause for our prestigious panelists. Thank you.